What is up, YouTube? Today I'm here to talk about competitive pinball strategy. Quick little video. Wanted to talk about player order. A lot of talk when you get into tournaments about some people choosing fourth every single time, some people saying that going first might be the best. And I wanted to talk about the pros and cons of each position, how you can get the benefit of choosing and knowing, depending on which game you're going into, where you should pick. If there is any benefit on a specific machine to going a certain position, or whatever you feel most comfortable with. Maybe you pick one for a while and you're like, I like going second. We can talk about that as well. But I just want to get into it real quick. So let's talk about choosing first player. Choosing first player gives you control over the game in multiple ways. This is probably my preferred pick, actually. Sometimes I'll choose first and people will be a bit surprised that I'm choosing first. They'll be like, that seems like a little overconfident or whatever. I think that there's multiple reasons why first is actually the best position. First off, there are games with sequential locks. And when I say that, I mean to say that, it's a physical lock that you need to lock multiple balls into. There is a huge benefit to going first on games like these usually. And that is the ball returns to the shooter lane. I recently played a game where I chose to go second in a two-player game on Toy Story 4. The main ball lock in that game, I would say, is probably the left side. It's the left side lock. Road trip multi-ball is what you're going for. You shoot a ball in there, it locks it physically, and then you get another ball in the shooter lane. My competitor got two balls locked in there before they drained. I step up, I'm going up to do my plan, hit that lock, goes right in there, and then instead of having it return to the shooter lane where I could go for the skill shot, which is worth a ton of points in that game, instead what happens is the ball just kicks out of that physical lock, and I have less control over the game. All of a sudden, my plans to get a bunch of points from the skill shot completely gone. My competitor hit the skill shot multiple times, which put them like 400,000 up on me on Toy Story Ball 1, which is a decent amount in that game. And then their future skill shots are going to be worth even more than that, and I just didn't even have a shot at it. I just want to pop in real quick and talk a little bit about the Toy Story video that just played. You'll notice that even though he was locking balls, it did kick out the same way. That's the competitive settings that they had set up, which is why that none of these rules matter as long as the machines are set up certain ways. So please, please, please make sure that when you go into these games, you know how the machines are going to function. The game that I was talking about where I played someone was just at my local barcade. But if you go to a big tournament, it's probably going to be set up a little bit different. So just observe, ask questions, find out things like that. Still doesn't mean you can't go first, but information is always going to be your number one thing that you want going into a game. So all that to say, I should have picked first in that game. I didn't think about it. Secondarily, I think that there is a mental edge to picking first. It's when I see scores, sometimes I get a little nervous, especially if it's a score that I don't feel comfortable necessarily reaching. It's a score that I always like to say that you play better in practice than competition. This is just what happens, right? Like if you're playing by yourself casually and you step up to a machine, you always have a shot of getting your best score you've ever gotten. In competition, it's less so because you have other pressures. You have the mental stress of knowing that you need to perform well. If you're on camera, that's another element. So picking first, you don't have any score that you're facing against. I like to say that this is as close to a practice game as you can get. You're stepping up and you're saying, okay, well, I'm going to try to get as much of an advantage as I can from ball one as possible. And if I don't, that's okay. I got two more balls, right? And I'll see where I'm at depending on where the other players are. But this lets you set the rhythm of the game. It's a little intimidating when someone picks first. I don't know if you faced this before, but sometimes the best player is like, yeah, I'll go first. And then in your head mentally, you're automatically like, well, I guess I'm aiming for second then. You want to be that player is what I'm saying. I think at the high level of pinball, the mental game might even be maybe not more than 50%, but it's a huge chunk of it. And any advantage you can get in that sense, you want to take. And finally, I think that momentum is really important. Let's say you were playing fourth player last round. You won that game, so now you have first choice of which player to be. And then you choose first. That has the least amount of time between balls played. You just won the game as player 4, and now you're going right into the next game as player 1. You're playing two balls right next to each other. If you're feeling good, you don't want anything to break that momentum, break that confidence. So I take first every single time if I'm winning fourth, unless for whatever reason there's a multi-ball issue or locks can be stolen, which we'll talk about later. But I'm telling you right now, consider first. It's way more powerful than you think it is, especially if you're someone that only picks fourth because you hear it's the best thing to do. But there are benefits to fourth, which we'll get to. Second player. Second player is one that no one picks first. But I think there's valid reasons for it as well. It's if you're a player that likes having a goal in front of you, it gives you the first goal that you're going to be able to get. And you can capitalize on player one's mistakes. If they go up, player one goes up, and they have an average ball, something that you know you can beat, you'll be more confident as player two than anywhere else position-wise. For a logistical standpoint, there is a very important reason to go player two, which is if the player in the first position doesn't finish locking all their balls, and it's a game where you can steal the locks, then player two is the best position you can be in. Games that I wrote down right here, Total Nuclear Annihilation comes to mind immediately, because that's another physical lock where you lock it behind the drop targets. So once you lock two balls there, if you drain, the next player can come in and just immediately get into multi-ball by hitting that drop target. Very easy shot when you have ball save, right? When you're under the stress of not having ball save and you need that third shot, a little bit more stressful. So player one has all the stress, but player two, if they come in and the two balls are locked, there's very little stress and they're gonna get that multi-ball every single time. So huge benefit on certain games. Another one, Twilight Zone Powerball. Less so in this game because you can pretty reliably get to the Powerball in first ball of Twilight Zone as player one, but depending on how the game is set, sometimes the Powerball comes a little bit later. You can tell when the Powerball's coming, and if you get the Powerball, if you don't know, you hit the gumball shot, and then you go right into multi-ball. So if your next ball lock with the Powerball is going to be if your next ball lock is the Powerball, and your player one, you just gave that to player two, there goes your multi-ball opportunity for that. And it's very important to the game too. You want to be going for Powerballs anyway, or the gumball shot anyway. So you're not going to be able to avoid it. So second player can be very good in that game as well. Again, you're going to have a target score you're aiming for. For me, that's a little intimidating, but for some other players, they like having a number that they know they need to reach. And if you get above that number, you're essentially player one now. You're controlling the game. Biggest benefit, I think, to going second is that you get the quickest glance at seeing how the machine is playing. Let's say you're playing a classic and one of the feeds is really bad, and that's what drains player one. Now you know that when it gets to that feed, you want to nudge a little bit just to randomize the movement. So you have more information than player one, which is a huge benefit. I won't deny that. You get more information the later you go, player three, player four, but I think the information is freshest as player two. So you can't downsize that. Third player. I've never seen anyone pick third first. I don't think there's a lot of reasons to pick third. I was really trying to rack my brain for why you would want to pick third, if you have the choice of any of them. All the positives of third can be said about fourth, I think. There's no clear advantages unless the player two was sloppy and didn't get their multi-ball from player one in a certain machine like that, something like that. I would argue that this is probably the worst position. If the first player picks fourth position and then it comes to you, I probably wouldn't pick third. I would either pick first or second. It usually goes down the line fourth, third, second, first, but it just doesn't give you any mental advantage. It doesn't give you any game advantage, unless there's like a very specific scenario, but you can't be betting on that. So I would say third player is probably the weakest position. And then we have the last player. This is the classic choice for a lot of people. Why? You simply have the most knowledge going into ball one. You've seen what all the other three players are going to do. You see how they drain. You see the sketchy issues that they're having with their game. If you don't have practice time, you can see how tilty the game is. So you do come in with the most info. If you have a comeback personality, this is almost always going to be your selection. If you're someone who you're not fazed by the score, when you see those scores, that's when you turn on. You have a huge mountain to climb. Sorry, I keep hitting the microphone. If you have a huge mountain to climb, this is the machine, or this is the position that you're going to want. It gives you the most power in terms of, all the other players can just watch and see what you do. It takes the comeback ability away from other players as well. So if you know that there's a player that's probably better than you in those comeback situations, they're a little bit more clutch than you, maybe you take fourth just so they don't have that power. Because I do know a lot of local players that are very good when they're last player and they can just like make any comeback possible. I don't want them to have that all the time. So that's when I'll take a fourth place. And going back to the first player strat, if you win in fourth place, then you pick first next round, and all of a sudden you have the most momentum. So those are the positions. Those are the reasons I would say to pick all positions. Don't just pick fourth blindly. Fourth and first, I think, have the most benefits just because, one's rearing and one's the front, the powerhouse. But yeah, I would say that go with your gut. Do what makes you the most comfortable. If you'd like more videos like this, just talking about the ins and outs of like small parts of competitive play, let me know. And let me know if you agree, disagree, whatever else. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you next week.